Good morning again. We are, aren't you just full already this morning? Doesn't feel like you've already been to church and you're wishing that I would sit down, but I'm not going to. Uh, but we are, it is so good. We are so rich, aren't we? We are so rich. And we have been talking about that over the last few weeks, about how rich we are as a people. And I want to continue on that. We're going to wrap up next week with this series, but just been talking about what it means to be rich. And I tell you, I feel rich. You know, I couldn't help but think, and I don't know if you, as you sat around the table, maybe some of you with your family and your friends and the things that we've been blessed with, I couldn't help but feel incredibly rich this week. Anybody else feel that way? Absolutely. I know I have. But we are going to wrap up this series next week, but over the past couple weeks, we've been talking about some things, and just wanted to share a couple of things that we forgot to mention in announcement time, but a couple of things. The Candy Cane Project, I know we've been talking about that, and the kids that we sponsor, and part of our Be Rich campaign this year, but they have all been sponsored, so thank you. Yeah. All of our kids have been sponsored. There will be opportunities for you to serve, and I'll talk to you about that. There's still opportunities with that ministry, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later. There's also opportunities with our global missions team. There's an arts and craft auction, I think, that'll be taking place on December 2nd from 6 to 8. So check your bulletin for that. But lots of opportunities. I'm going to be sharing some of that this week. But over the last couple of weeks, if you're just joining us this week for the first time, or you haven't been at church and you haven't heard of the past couple of weeks, we've talked about a lot of different things about the fact that if we're in the top, if you make over $40,000 a year, that you're in the top 1% of wage earners in the world. And so effectively, most of us, if not all of us, are in the top 1 to 2 to 3% of wage earners in the world. And so the fact is that we are all rich by comparison. And we talked about that many of us, the problem is that many of us don't feel rich. We want to feel rich, but we don't feel rich because we've lost our margin, and we are living rich and we have no margin. We don't like to admit that we're rich. We're plagued by discontentment. We like to upgrade, and then if we're not careful, our hope begins to migrate from God and our provider into the things that he provides. And our hope begins to migrate into our possessions and our ability to make money and earn money and pay our bills and do things like that, and our 401ks and our retirements and our houses and everything else that we have. Our hope begins to migrate into that, and it shifts from this hope that we have in our Father and our Father to provide. And so this morning I want to continue on that, but I want to challenge you. We're going to kind of turn a little bit from that and just want to challenge you to do more and give more. Now, some of you are like, oh no, are you kidding me? I'm giving enough. I'm giving all I can now, and that's okay. But hang with me. But so to keep our hope from migrating, I think what's important for us to do, and to keep our hope from migrating into our possessions or into money or into the things that we can accomplish with our own hands, I think the thing that we have to do is we have to pre-decide to do more and give more. And so since we have more, we're obligated to do more and to give more. So today I'm going to challenge us to do more and give more. Now, if you're not good at being rich, that phrase makes you a little nervous. If you're not good at being rich, and most of us aren't good at being rich, that phrase of I'm going to do more and give more makes us a little nervous, doesn't it? Because we're like, I don't really want to give more, Trent. And so this holiday season, as we invade our communities, we want to invade our communities with generosity, and I gave you 3 ways to do that last week, and you guys are responding, and so I love that. But Paul, really the whole premise of this series is founded in 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 through 18, where Paul gives Timothy some instructions to rich people. And he's really telling Timothy, hey, here's what you need to say to rich people. And the fact is, we've already established over the last couple of weeks that we're rich, and so we are just going to practice being rich here at Salem Grace, and we're gonna do that together and try to get better at being rich. And so last week I had you all made a declaration last week, which was what? Does any of you remember what I made you say last week? Anybody? Nobody even remembers what we preached. So were you here? I made you say this phrase, I will not place my trust in riches, but in him who richly provides, right? I will not place my trust in riches, but I'm going to place my trust in him who richly provides. Remember, we all agreed. You guys said it. I made you say it last week. We're going to do that. And so today, Paul tells us how to keep our hope from migrating from God to wealth. And so I'll start from the top. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17, this is where we pick up this scripture. And we'll start from the top here today. And he says, command those who are rich in this present world, which by most part is all of us. So he's talking to us. And we talked about this last week, not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides with everything for our enjoyment. And so we stop there in verse 16 and 17, and we've come up to that point. And then he goes on. And so now he's telling us, and now as Paul is telling Timothy this, tell them this. And he goes on in verse 18, and he says this, command them to, so pay attention, Paul is going to tell us something here. He's telling Timothy, command them to do this. These rich people that we've just talked about, in verse 17, he just, put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, put their hope in God, who richly provides. Now, command them to do good. To do good. Everybody ever get that instruction as a kid? You be good. You ever tell your kids that? You better be good. You better be good. You better do good. And I remember when we were young, my some of you may not know. I don't know. My dad was a pastor. Most of you know that. My dad and mom are a pastor. And then I had 3 brothers, and there was all 4 of us. I was the second child. And so we would have to go, and mom dressed us all alike until a year ago. Somewhere. It was just, I don't know, we were just like these little, I don't know, I think she really wanted quadruplets. I don't know, it was the mix and match thing. And so she would always, anytime we went somewhere and we would get invited to somebody's house, and we always did something really bad. We would break stuff or tell bad jokes at the dinner table or whatever it is. But we would always, anybody ever get a pregame speech from your mom? Like the pregame, now when we go in there, she would line us all up. It was like the pregame huddle, Here's when we go in there, you're going to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, and yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, sir. She was just teaching us those skills, those skill sets in life. And so we would get that, and so he's commanding us to do good. You're going to do good in there. I think she hoped that we would, but most of the time we didn't. And I think that's just the image that popped in my head when I read this scripture. Command them to do good. And and I don't think Paul is talking, he's not talking about in a moral sense here. He's not talking about, hey, be honest, fair. There's nothing unique to rich people about that. But to figure out how to do good as only a rich person can, and to be rich in good deeds. Command them to do good and to be rich. Be rich in good deeds. That's what Paul is telling Timothy to tell all of us rich folks. And I think those words. So command them to do good and to be rich in good deeds. But he's saying more than the average person. And, I think that, let me ask you another question. Have you ever, just this week, how many times do you think you have said, has anybody ever said this phrase? If you said, I just don't have time. Anybody? Anybody have said that this week? I'm just not sure. I'm just not sure I have time. I'd love to do that, but man, I haven't had time. I haven't had time. Anybody ever said that? Raise your hand if you said that this week. I just haven't had time. I haven't had time. And does the thought of you adding something else to your plate freak you out? Does that stress you out? Like if there was one more thing, if you just had one more thing to do, like it would just like tip you over the edge. It's like, I can't possibly, I don't know how. And here's the problem, is because we have rich schedules, don't we? We're living rich with our schedules. We live rich schedules. Rich people have a hard time committing to doing good on a regular basis because of our rich schedules. We just don't have time. We don't have time to be rich in doing good deeds because we can't make time for it in our schedules because we have rich schedules. And so another characteristic of rich people is we have a hard time committing to doing good on a regular basis. And you know what? I see that true around here all the time. People want to be rich. They want to feel rich in good deeds, but they're not willing to commit to time. One of the things that we do, some of you are in here, Lindsay, I see Lindsay out there. They're about the only person I can see. But every year we have youth meeting and Crave meeting and children's meetings. And before we kick that off in August, we meet with all of the leaders of those ministries. And we pull them into a meeting and we'll feed them, we'll bribe them with food or something. And then we have a meeting, and at that meeting, we ask people to give us 1 year. Every Wednesday for 1 year. And it's hard, isn't it, Lindsay? Because we have a hard time being rich with our schedule. And we have a hard time committing to something consistently. That's why we provide those service opportunities. It's because it's what good rich people do. And there are all kinds of opportunities to be rich in good deeds around this church if you look. And so in verse 18 he says, and to be generous, he goes on, command them to do good and to be rich, and to be generous and willing to share. Generous and share. 2 words. If you look those 2 words up in the Greek, they're 2 different words with the same emphasis, for emphasis, you know. It's not just give. It's the same meaning for emphasis. Not just to give. Everybody's supposed to give. You get that? Everybody's supposed to give. So we're not talking about just giving. It's give more than the average person. So if you want to be rich, to be generous and willing to share. To give more than the average person. Why? Because we can. So, rich schedules. The other thing, to give more. Did you know that we really should be giving more than giving more than the average person because we can. But American rich people give less than average, not more than average. Did you know that? And American people give less than average, not more than average. And generally speaking, rich people are not generous people because rich people give big dollars, but not big percentages. And the percentage is what counts. And so I want to tell you a story. If you flip over to your Bibles, if you have your Bible, and you flip to chapter 12, in Mark chapter 12, there's a story. It's a real little bitty thing toward the end of the chapter in verse 44, and it's called the widow's mite. Anybody ever heard that? Heard that story before? Probably. Maybe some of you haven't. Maybe you haven't been around the church. But we'll pick this up in verse 41, Mark chapter 12, verse 41. And the widow's mite. And one day, Jesus was out by the temple, basically up to this, he was out in the temple watching, and he was watching people as they said. And Mark chapter 12, verse 41, Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts. But a poor widow came and put 2 very small copper coins worth only a few cents. Who's heard that story before? Okay. I don't want to embarrass anybody. Most of us, a lot of us, my majority have heard that story before out of the Bible. We know kind of the meaning of it, right? But the fact of the matter is, Jesus, there's 2 things that's interesting to me here. Number one, that Jesus was watching. Jesus is watching what people are putting in. Isn't that interesting? I just found that interesting as part about this story. He was watching what people were dropping into the plate. And I'm not, now if you're first time here and you're a guest and you haven't been to church, maybe you had a bad experience at church and you think, oh, well, sure, here comes the money message. Promise, it's not about that. It's about being rich and doing good deeds. Literally, if you look up the word for the copper coins, it's leptus. In the King James, it's basically 2 mites. And with the least valuable coin in circulation in Palestine during that time. They were the least valuable coin you could possibly have. I guess it would probably be like a penny, but it wasn't even worth that much. It was equivalent to about 1/28th actually, of a denarius, or about 6 minutes of a daily wage is what it was equivalent to, roughly speaking. It was equivalent to about 6 minutes of your day. 2 coins. Tiniest little coins ever. Verse 43, Jesus picks up. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly, I tell you, this poor widow has put in more into the treasury than all the others." All the others. Who's the bigger giver, Jesus? This widow with her 2 puny coins. Why? Why is she the bigger giver? Because it's a percentage. It's based on a percentage. Verse 44, they all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything she had to live on. All she had to live on. Put in everything. It was a percentage. It wasn't an amount. It's not about the amount that you put in the plate. Do you understand that? It's about the percentage of how much of a generous giver you are. And the problem is that most Americans, so Paul's point, what's Paul's point in this? Rich people should give bigger amounts and higher percentages. Right? Shouldn't we? The more you make, the higher the percentage you should give. But the problem is most Americans don't think about it in percentages. We don't. We think about it in amount. And when the offering plate goes by or whatever it is that you're giving, you're like, I'll just throw that in. You don't think about it in percentages. We don't think about percentages. Most Americans don't think in terms of percentages. They don't pick a percentage to live on, to save, or to give. So if you want to feel rich, pick a percentage. You know, I talk to newlyweds sometimes, and one of the things that we discuss in our premarital counseling is finances, because there's a few things that cause problems in marriages, and finances, we all know, are one of them, right? Pick a percentage to live on. Pick a percentage to save. Pick a percentage to give. Be a percentage giver. The problem is people are spontaneous, emotionally driven givers. They're not percentage givers. We're spontaneous, emotionally driven givers. You invite people to a fundraiser, show them some picture of children, people will give, right? Spontaneous giving does not yield a satisfying return. We feel better, but it's not really much of an investment. They give leftovers. This woman gave a percentage of all she had to live on. I'm not saying we have to give everything we have to give on. Be a percentage giver. So steps to doing more, so there are a few steps to giving more and doing more. And the only way to take these instructions seriously is to pre-decide what you're going to give. That's the only way to take this step, to take this seriously and to make any kind of change in your life. And so how much? How much, Trent? What are you saying? How much do I need to give? What do I need to? How much do I need to give of my time, of my money, of my resources, of all, my volunteer? Pick a percentage of money and a slice of time and pre-commit to it. And that's that's the way you do that. Pick a percentage and a slice of time and pre-commit to it. Pick a couple of organizations, commit to a percentage of your income to them, and if possible, some time to them. Find something that captures your heart. Pre-decide that's how you're going to be rich. If we pre-decide what we're going to give and do that. There are always opportunities for spontaneous doing and giving, and those should be kind of the expectation, not the rule, or the exception, not the rule. There's always going to be those moments when we have an opportunity to spontaneously give to somebody, but that should be the expectation, not the rule. The rule should be, hey, I'm going to give a percentage of what I make, the first gift of my offering back to Jesus, because that's what the Scripture tells us that we need to do. So pick a percentage. If you don't feel like you can start at 10% like Scripture teaches us we should do, start at 6%. Did you know that people actually give by accident about 6%, just by accident? Bump it up to 10%. And to be a percentage giver. The median household, pick a percentage. Pick some time. Pick amount of time that you want to give. Rich schedules. Did you know that if you work 60 hours a week and you get 8 hours of sleep a night, that leaves you about 52 hours a week? Did you know that? If you work a 60-hour work week and you get 8 hours of sleep every night, that leaves you 52 hours a week. But typically, we're selfish with that. We're going to spend that on us. If you gave 2 hours out of that 52, you still got 50 left. It's almost 2 days. All to yourself. Be a percentage giver. Pick amount of time that you want to spend. Pick how much time that you're willing to give. The median household in America is about 50,000. And average people give about 6% by accident each year. If you don't choose to do more and give more on purpose, you will have nothing to show for your extra time and your extra money. Now, I know this isn't like a run your aisle type of message. I get it. It's not a really fun one to preach. But it's important if we want to be rich and we're going to practice being rich. Pick a percentage, be a percentage giver. Pick some time. So in conclusion, don't you love when preachers say that? Since you have more, do more and give more. But do and give systematically. That's how to be rich. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17 through 18 says, command them to do good, to be rich in good deeds, and be generous and willing to share. Can you imagine what would happen if everybody in here did that? Can you imagine what would happen? Ways to start doing more and giving more here at Salem Grace. I want to cover that real quick in our community. On the 4th Friday of every month here at Salem Grace, we have a food pantry. And we give, I don't know how many bags of groceries away. Tons, don't we, Nellie? About 150. About 150 bags of groceries. Those groceries, we don't just walk in the gym and magically those groceries are in the sacks. Wow. They bag themselves. Amazing. People show up and put food into those bags. And then on the 4th Friday of every month, people show up and we feed breakfast to those folks. And then we carry groceries out to their car and we help them to the car. So if you want to give, be a percentage giver. Say, you know what? I'm going to give 1 hour a month out of the 52 that I have left in a week, most generally. And I'm going to show up, and I'm going to do it consistently. I'm not going to just do it once and feel good about myself and then forget about it for the 10 months later. I'm going to do it consistently. I'm going to be committed. I'm going to be here. It's another way you can do it. Did you know that the chair that you're sitting in right now did not set itself up? It did not walk out of that room and plan itself for you to sit in it. Somebody set that chair up for you to sit in this morning. Every week, somebody shows up and sets these chairs up. I've even heard of people actually praying for them as they're setting them up. What's the person's going to sit in this chair? You're a percentage giver. Candy cane. We need help. The kids are sponsored. They've got a bunch of gifts to wrap. You want to help? You want to do something? Anybody can do? Show up and help wrap the gift. We need volunteers on December 12th. They're going to be setting all that up. On December 12th here at Salem Grace Church, and they'll come into the old sanctuary down there where our children's meet, and they'll set all that up, and they'll put all the gifts out, and they'll be ready for people to come to be ministered to and to be handed something that can say, hey, December 13th, there'll be people here. We'll be carrying stuff to the cars. We'll be meeting people. It's a great way to get to know some people in your community. We have Save-A-Lot groceries. $6. You can put a bag of groceries that'll be handed out at our food pantry in December. There's a ton of ways that you guys can get engaged this holiday season. So I know it's a challenging message this morning, but I'm just going to ask you to stand with me this morning and ask the band to come. It's not something that, like, overly exciting message. I get that. But if we're going to be good at being rich, we're going to have to practice. And there are ways that we can do that right here, right now, this week, this month. To be rich in good deeds. To be generous with our time. To be a percentage to giver. Like the widow that decided, you know what, I'm going to give this percentage. I'm going to live on this amount. I'm going to give this amount. And I'm going to save this amount every month, every week when I get paid. I'm not going to just give out of my excess and I've got an extra $5 in my wallet, so I don't really need it. I'm going to be a percentage giver of my time and my resources, and that's how we be rich. Let's pray. Father, thank you so much. Father, I know it's a challenging message this morning, Jesus. I just pray that somehow, Lord, that we would be challenged to look at the way we are living, how we're spending our money, how we're spending our time, and to take Paul's advice to Timothy and be rich in good deeds and to be generous with our time and our resources and our care for other people that are around us. Lord, thank you for this church. Thank you for those who are generous. Thank you for all of those people that are here this morning that are already rich. And I know we have those, Father. I know we have people here this morning that have been faithful. People that have faithfully given of their time. People that are faithfully giving of their money. People that are faithfully giving of their resources. Thank you for those people, Lord, that are percentage givers here. Give you praise for those people. Continue to bless them. Continue to help us feel rich in the consistency and how we live our lives outside of this place. Challenge us, Lord, to be rich in our community this week. Help us to look for those opportunities that capture our heart, those things that we can get engaged in, those things that we can feel good about volunteering for. And even though we're tired and even though we're exhausted and we don't feel like we have time for anything else in our schedule, Lord, help us to learn to be rich in our good deeds this holiday season. Thank you so much for your love and your grace and for this church. Walk with us as we leave this place and richly bless us. In your precious holy name I pray.